Steve, for those who have been, showing up, Steve's one of the more consistent folks showing up. And over time, as we've talked more and more about AI, I just keep hearing all these great things that he's been doing and working with the team in this, quasi junk drawer of all roles, that Scrum Master, Product Owner, Project Manager role. He'd mentioned that, and I thought it was a good fit. But he also had just recently done something he was thought was really cool. He showed it to me. I think it's really cool. And so we're going to walk through some of that. But also in the course of talking with Steve, I think there's a real powerful story and example of what does it look like to be the kind of person that is finding themselves in this space where you're being asked for input and to collaborate around what can AI do. Lots of people worry about job security, and yet if you're the go-to person, you're probably in a safer space. So maybe it is timely we talked about that. I think there's something there about the mindset we bring in. I think there's something about what we might take for granted as, like, if we kind of consider ourselves agilists or agile minded, but a lot of people who work around these other departments, especially AI, more and more is outside of IT. I found myself working with someone last week who had never opened Copilot before. So I was wondering why they're having a problem running the prompt. He's like, I don't know where Copilot is. I go, well, okay. So there's still folks like that out there. So I think there's a lot about mindsets that we just assume, but I think it's important to kind of make that visible. And there's some storytelling we might take to others as well, and that the principles and how we lean in and, like, just try something, have a experimental mindset. Maybe it's even on your own time, but I think there's just a whole lot of goodness, not just in what he's going to be actually showing off, which is super cool. But I think that story arc is really cool and a pattern that we might learn from ourselves. I sure did. I took a whole page of notes hearing Steve share about this whole journey, but also we might, go out and share with others as well. So with that, Steve, I'll hand off to you.
Yeah, thanks. So give you a little bit of background before I share my screen. So my title is delivery lead, and I'm kind of doing a little bit of product management, a little bit of project management, some Scrum Master stuff, delivery, all those things. So I have two teams I'm responsible for and a project. And so I got to thinking about, oh man, how am I going to be able to report on these things and keep track of all this stuff? And oh, that's right, there's an action item that the project manager and I are supposed to have done by the end of today, and this was last Friday, on how we're going to keep track of that. And we talked about it a little bit. Oh, wait a minute. What if instead of doing all that other stuff, instead of doing all that other stuff that's very manual, what if I just did a dashboard? What would that dashboard look like? So let me show you where I landed, and then I'll kind of talk through how I got there. And then feel free to stop me at any point in time and ask questions or give feedback. So here's what I have. So at the top, I have my key. I have all of my epics grouped by team. And then I have these quality things that are checking. So is the target start, target end date different than the baseline date? Does my epic status align with the story statuses? Is there something that's blocked? Are there more stories than what there were than when we first started? Could that be scope creep? Is it just people being more effective and efficient? Is there in progress work that's been there for, like, I'm looking at like 5 days or more? So that it kind of highlights, hopefully early on, is there something that's starting to drag? And then this time check one is a little bit more complicated because I'm looking at the cycle time for each team, and if there's more than one person working on it, and with the stuff that's remaining, will the epic still complete by the target end date? So where I started was, okay, I want a dashboard. I don't want to have something that I have to manually do. So where would I start? So I went into Rovo, and for those that may be not familiar with it, Rovo is the AI tool within inside Jira. And I just said, hey, I'm trying to create a prompt, but having some trouble putting it together. I will provide you with information for the prompt. Ask me questions where you feel there are gaps that could lead to incorrect results. Remember the answers to each of those questions. When you no longer have any questions and you feel the results will be correct, use the instructions and answers to the questions to create a prompt I can use. So that's where I started, because I don't know. I know what I want to end with, and I have some ideas and thoughts, but I really don't know where I'm going. So I'm still trying to kind of form what those thoughts are. And what I found really useful for me is just tell the AI that. because I'm instructing it that I'm not there yet. So don't give me an answer. Help me figure out what that answer is. So it went through and it asked me a bunch of questions where it saw some gaps. I would answer those questions. We went back and forth, and then eventually ended up with where's it at? A prompt that I can use. And then once I had that prompt, I kind of iterated on it and went, oh, I see some gaps here. Hey, could we add something like that? How would this impact this? And so it was more like having a conversation with an expert to get me to a point to where I now had data that was spitting out. So then what I did is I went in and created a simple automation that just said, hey, every Thursday morning at 8 a.m., I want you to run this Rovo agent. And then I want you to create a Confluence page, put the legend up at the top, and then just put in the response. So what I ended up with is, let me, really close to this. So there's a couple things I still am trying to figure out how to do because I haven't done it yet. And that is, it gives me each group and a table, but the table is the same size column, and it gives me a URL link instead of an inline link. So I spend 5 minutes and I update the links and format the columns. And what I'll eventually do is figure out how to add those instructions to Rovo or to the automation and have it do that for me so that I don't have to do anything with it. And then the goal behind this is now I have something that I can use. I can have each of the leads go in and look at their stuff, and anything that's not green, they can investigate and do something with. And then every Friday, what we'll do is we'll get together and talk through that stuff. The other thing it does is if anything is not green, it provides information as to, hey, what column is that? Why is it not green? So it helps provide a little bit of instruction to where it needs to go and what it needs to do. One of the ideas that I got from this is there's a project manager that I'm a good friend with, and he created a Gemini gem. So they have a not a PDF, they have a Google Sheet there where they're providing a project update to executive leadership, and they want all the project managers to have the same information. So just specifically for their project. So he created a quality gem that goes through and does all these quality checks and says, hey, if it's this but doesn't equal this, then it'll give it a flag and then say, here's what you need to do to fix that. And so having that conversation with him and then some other thoughts around dashboards got me to thinking, well, how do I begin doing that? How do I use the AI to help me with it? And again, I didn't know where to start, so I just started asking it the questions. One of the other things that I found out in the process of this is when it would run, it would take a good few minutes to get through everything. And I went, man, there's got to be something I'm not thinking about. So I just went into Rovo and said, hey, here's my tool, but it seems to be running slow. Is there a more efficient way that the instructions could be written to make this run faster? And it goes, oh yeah, absolutely. You're making the way your instructions are written, it's making multiple calls to the Jira API, and that's going to do this. Whereas if you just make these changes here in your instructions, you can query it, store that information, and then it can look through that stored information, and you're only making minimal calls to that Jira API. And I went, oh, I did not know that. So I said, can you give me the instructions that will match with what you just shared with me? So it gave me the updated instructions. I copied and pasted in, and now it's running like 15 to 20 times faster. I actually went back to a previous one that I did where I was seeing some inconsistencies, and I thought, it may have something to do with not quite timing out, but running out of tokens and all that. So I said, hey, here is a set of instructions that I have, and I'm seeing these types of things. Is there a more efficient way that these instructions could be written to minimize the number of API calls to Jira and a few other things? And it goes, oh yeah, do this. And so I got those updated set of instructions, copied and pasted those back into my Rovo agent, and now it's working fantastic. It ran fairly quick to begin with, but I'm seeing my data come back a lot more accurate. The other thing too with this one is I need to do something similar with outcomes. So all I did is I just copied the Rovo agent that I had, and went through and updated it to be for outcomes instead of epics. So let me explain what outcomes is. So in our company, we have initiatives, but then we have this interim piece between initiatives and epics that we call outcomes. And it's like big MVP chunk for a big project. And so all of our epics roll up to outcomes. So the project manager and the product manager are the one that's going to be managing those. So I already have the automation all set up, ready to go. I just need to turn it on. I have a Rovo agent, but I need to now sit down with them and go, hey, the way we define these fields for an outcome may look a little bit differently than it does for an epic. Let's sit down and talk about that. And once I have that information, I'll be able to quickly go in and update the Rovo agent and have it up and going. So to manually do all this stuff, I mean, you guys can imagine it's hours and hours and hours of research and following up and all that other stuff. And I think I spent less than 10 hours total on this. Most of it was Friday night as I was thinking about it. I went, well, I'm just going to spend an hour or two on this and call it quits at about 5:30, 6 o'clock. And next thing I knew, it was a quarter to 11. And I'm like, I have something I can share. I need to make a few tweaks and stuff, but I now have something that's workable. And so I sent a message over to the project manager, and what she did is she flipped her hair and goes, I'm the envy of all the other project managers now. But it's for me, it's really about, instead of using Rovo to go, how do I want to put it? Does design and develop something? I'm like, hey, how can I use Rovo to help me think through this problem until I can get to a point to where I'm ready to go. The other one I wanted to share with you guys, I don't have like necessarily specific output, but I was pulled into a meeting for, there's another team that gets an email once a month with a PDF, and it has a whole bunch of tasks in there that they need to do. And so they have somebody that spends 7+ hours every single month putting all those tasks into Jira. And they go, well, is there a way that I can use Rovo to do that? So as they're talking, I saw, oh, there's a PDF in the email I can look at, and I opened it up. And so this one, no. Anyway, basically what I did is I just asked it, I spent just a couple minutes while they were talking and said, hey, I have this PDF document. I need to extract subtasks out of this and input those into Jira. Can you extract these for me? And so it came up with a list and said, yeah, here's all these 36 subtasks. Do you want me to create those for you? And so when they stopped talking, I said, hey, can I show you guys something real quick? And I pulled it up and I said, yep, it works. I said, we'll need to tweak it a little bit, but to make sure that if you have bullets in the PDF document, it translates to bullets inside the thing. And but I go, yeah, totally works. We can totally do that. So after the call, I spent about another hour figuring out how to get the formatting correct. And it was a lot of that same type of process. Hey, here's what I'm trying to accomplish. It doesn't seem to be doing that. These are the results that I'm getting. What is it that's unique about Jira that I'm not thinking of? And it turns out that when you're inputting information into a text field in like a work item, CSS doesn't work or HTML doesn't work. It's got a very specific format. So your instructions have to be very specific to ensure that it's looking at it that way. And so now I have that up and going. I have a meeting with them on Monday, and I'm going to sit down and I'm going to walk them through my thought process so that they can create that for themselves. And the end goal is that they will be able to start doing more of that stuff for themselves. Because what I'm finding is a lot of people will tell me, well, I just need to take some time to sit down and learn Rovo. It's like, you don't sit down and learn Rovo. I mean, you don't learn how to drink. You just pick up a glass and you start drinking. And Rovo for me is the same way. I just pick up and I just start drinking. I start asking it questions. Instead of trying to dig into stuff and try to locate it, find it for myself, I use it to help navigate me to the right direction, or just provide the information I need by asking it the questions.
A quick question on that, Steve. I think if I remember right, you're saying the genesis of all this was you actually asking the question, not that you already had an idea of what to build. You just said, help me, help me solve this problem, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Here's my problem. Here's my ideas and thoughts. One thing I have discovered with Rovo, and this is through listening to other people talk about how they're doing stuff with AI. whether that be a podcast or a YouTube video or just hearing somebody talking and generating an idea to go, well, instead of if I know that AI is wanting to do its best to please me, it's going to want to give me the answer. Well, I don't know what that question is yet. So instead of giving it information that where it's trying to give me the answer, let me start with the conversation and let it know, hey, I don't know what the question is to ask. Can we talk about that? Can we figure it out together? Um, and so I use it for almost like ideation to kind of think through that process. And then once I'm like, okay, I feel really good about this. Hey, AI, am I missing anything? Is there something I'm not thinking of? And ask me some questions around that. And I'm finding that that is really, really useful. And of course, the new tool that I've learned that I mentioned earlier is start asking it, hey, is this the most efficient prompt? Is there a way that it could be more efficient so that it runs faster, it's more effective, it has a higher chance of getting a right answer, less chance of hallucinations? What do I need to change to make that happen? I think I can show you what.
Steve,
Yeah,
this is Brian Akers here. Um, this is impressive work, how it's all come together, and hearing some of the things that you're, saying that, your mental journey went through, uh, has triggered a lot of my experiences as well. And um, I've had to address some of those that you're bringing up by creating a memory file to lay out sort of the guiding principles of how I want this structured, whether it's, test cases or thou shalt whatever that is. So anytime it does an investigation or, an exploratory result for you, it references that memory file before it comes back to you. Just, it's
great.
a thing that's helped me out in the past.
Brian,
Yeah, here's
sorry,
go ahead.
does it access that because you reference that in each prompt? Is it kind of built into a template or?
So where I've gone with this is I created a memory file locally and then of course pushed it to a Git so it could reference it every single time. And then it's just part of the workflow. As soon as you ask it a question, the first thing it does is reference that memory file and then goes out and conquers the world.
That is awesome. Here's the instructions that it gave me. So they're pretty lengthy. Um, and so I'm telling it one of the things, the first iteration, it gave me a summary of what I was asking for. And I'm like, no, 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 I don't want a summary. I want it listed out. And so when I talk through that with the AI, it goes, okay, well, here's the instructions that you need to make sure that it provides this and not this. Um, what I was able to do, the way it was generated, is I was able to read through each one and go, oh, wait a minute, here's a scenario I hadn't even thought of. What if I have an epic that has no children? This stat doesn't really make sense, and it's always going to show up red. So I think I have like three other scenarios that would wrap around that. Sometimes, depending on how complicated it was, I'd go back to the AI and go, hey, here's what I'm thinking. Here's these other scenarios I'm thinking of. Where do these need to be added into the instructions? And then other times it was pretty straightforward and I would just type it in. And then I added skills that I wanted it to have. And then we just used the all knowledge most of the time. But
Steve, are you using a database or some type of Postgres for this, or is it just a API hit and then it sort of does a calculation?
actually, that's a good question. I forgot about that. So one of the things that I had asked is, can I ask it what the baseline, what the target start date and what the target end date was as of this date, and get the right answer every time? And what it gave back is that Rovo doesn't have great access to read through the history of things, so the consistency was going to be way off. And so I went, okay, well, if that's an issue right now, I will solve that later. I need to get to a solution before that. So what I did is I did a query to get all my epics, and where's that? At the end, I went through and grabbed all the target start, target end dates, Oh, there we go. Target start, target end dates as of our baseline date, and then the number of children it had. And then I just created a Confluence page for that. So now what it does when it runs that quality check, it looks at this page and compares it against this page.
And that was just done with a prompt as well. This Confluence page, the list. This wasn't manual or manual review edit.
That one, I think I did a JQL because I already had a JQL up and going. And so I just said, hey, give me all the epics and I want the target start, target end date. And from there, I may have used AI to say, give me the number of stories for each one listed out, and then copied and pasted that in.
Okay.
And then I just did some spot checking to make sure that it was accurate. So I looked for anything that might have been like an edge case, and then, a handful of others. And everything's coming back really well. The only one that, like I said, I'm not 100% confident on is that time check, because I think there's some opportunities where it could be off. And so I'm mentioning that to each of the leads. So as they're looking at that, they can keep an eye on it and provide any feedback so we can tweak our instructions.
Yeah. And you might have already mentioned this, so apologies if so, but you said you basically were able to kind of take this structured piece and then just roll it up one to the outcomes without a lot of effort. And now you got basically top down reporting.
Yeah. 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 Other than sitting down with the project manager to make sure things are defined well. But literally once this was up and going, I just went and copied what I already had, spent about 15 minutes updating from Epic to outcome. I had to remove a couple lines of instructions because they were very specific to Epics. And it's done. So my automation is already done. It's just turned off, waiting to get a final thumbs up. And I'll end up tweaking some of the instructions for the outcome. And then it's up and going. So in a matter of me sitting down on Friday, putting that together, sharing an email with the project manager. They've already shared it out with several other project managers, and she's going to start including it in her executive report that goes out to leadership on the projects. So in just a matter of a couple days, we now have this up and going. And then where this will potentially land is, as this gets shared out with more and more project managers, they can literally pick this up since the Rovo agent is neutral to whatever project. Once they create that baseline page, the automation is 3 steps, and they will now have reports for their projects across the entire PMO that they can begin doing this for.
Yeah. And I don't know how many of us have been that spot on the reporting and the top down and how that's constantly fraught with challenges and issues or how long that takes. But one, who wouldn't like to be able to have that level of reporting within a week? I'm thinking how long many groups have spent trying to do that. And again, the power of AI, but I also think Steve to make a couple of points, just taking an idea, running with it in the way you run with the partnering with AI to say, I'm working on this, partner with me on that, is a great example as well. I love that. As Steve, you'd mentioned that you've been, obviously this builds on a foundation of you doing stuff with AI, and you'd mentioned you'd done a few automations. How many did you say you've done?
Oh, automations within Jira, I've done probably a few hundred. Most of them are really complicated. Ones that get a little bit more complicated. So, for example, I have one where it gets kicked off manually. Product manager goes, "Oh, I need to create this story or this spike." So when they go to open it up, they go to their Epic. They click on the automation. It pops up a form, asks them, "Hey, what's your title? What's your description?" And then it runs a Rovo agent that's a story spike generator that looks at that information and puts it into a who, what, why format, and then a section around, hey, what are additional things you may want to talk about and consider, and then the acceptance criteria. Well, I wanted the description stuff in the description and the acceptance criteria in the acceptance box. Mm-hmm. And that was pretty complicated because there's some scripting that you have to do, and it's not scripting that I'm familiar with. So I just went into Rovo and said, hey, how do I parse this out? How do I find this information and do this? So, after a few iterations, I now have that up and going. But I have probably 6 or 7 Rovo agents that I use pretty regularly. Because like one other thing that I use on here is I create a status report every 2 weeks for this team. And one of the things that I don't necessarily enjoy is going through and digging through all the stuff to try to find all the things that leadership needs to do. So I just created a Rovo agent that goes out and looks for any project challenges and frictions during that time period, any strategic successes, and just generic operational progress. But I wanted it to be a little bit more actionable so that leadership knew better where to kind of lean in. And again, it was a conversation with AI to go, hey, how do I think about this? What would this look like? And so I ended up with it goes, okay, here's what the challenge or friction is. By the way, this one's resolved. You don't need to do anything with it. Here's what the obstacle was. Here's the action that was taken, and here's what it related to. And then in some cases, hey, it's mitigated or it is actively or it's in progress, and I think the other one's stalled. And so as leadership begins to look at that stuff, they can go, okay, here's where I need to lean in, or hey, I've seen that problem show up like 3 or 4 times now. Maybe I need to have a conversation and find out what I need to do. But I wanted it to be, again, actionable, but also help communicate what the status of that problem was so that they didn't start jumping in on stuff that's been taken care of.
Yeah. So some of this might go without saying to a lot of us, how many times we had to have those meetings where you have to sit with the team, basically just like, can we just walk the board and make this data current or clean it up, right? Which everyone loves that. I don't want to take that joy away, but the fact that we can automatically identify it. And if I'm one of the customers for Steve, and it's just something that just prompts me and saying, just give me this 2 bits of information, right? Or the fact that we've already, we did 80% of the work on this, and now I just have to meet with the team on a couple of things instead of, chew up an hour and a half. There's a reason they don't love these meetings. And I think in their head, they clock, is this the most efficient way we could do this? So I think on that servant side, Steve's leading by saying, let me just put something together, and it can help out everyone. On top of the fact that obviously his internal net promoter score is probably going way up because people are saying like, this is great, right? And the small thing, Steve, you mentioned that, or I asked you a question like, well, hey, you called this stalled or whatever, like, do you guys have that defined internally? And Steve's like, well, no, I just went ahead and thought if it's within this range, this would work. And I also think it's good that almost like that MVP mindset, how about we just put something in front of them as a prototype instead of call 3 months of meetings to everyone argue about, well, when we say stalled, what does that mean, right? Instead, I'll put something together, put it in front of you, and if you like it, which they will because they have something in their hands, well, now we have something already moving, and we can just update that's now already being essentially productionized for our dashboard reporting. So I don't know if you want to add to that, Steve. I just thought that was great. Like, let me just put something together and put it in front of them and see. But the response has been very positive, right?
Oh yeah. And like in the other case was stalled, my thought process is stories should be wrapping up in about a week. Some teams, they have a tendency to fall more into 2 weeks. So if I have something that's in progress and there's no updates to that, there's no change in status, there's no comments that's been added, that means it's sitting there. So what I said is, okay, if anything's been there for 5 days, I want an orange status so that I know, hey, I just want to keep an eye on that. If it's been greater than 9 days, I want it to be red. So something's sitting there. Maybe it'll turn out to be nothing. Maybe they just don't make small stories, but at least then I know to follow up and ask that question.
Right. Love that.
And I did it just as a starting point. And then I have like a document that defines what all that is so that people can go, hey, what if we changed it to this instead of this? What do you think that would look like? Would that be okay?
Yeah. 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 Giving them something to work with. That's the same thing as our constant, the product owners. I'll know it when I see it. Well, let's put something in front of you. I just think that's a good way to live this out. Mandy, you put a comment in the comments thread. Didn't know if you wanted to add anything to that. I appreciate the feedback, but I want to give you space in case you wanted to follow up on that.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Yeah, so I have to give Scott a shout out. He introduced me to some new fantastic podcasts, specifically Chat PRD founder Claire Vo with How to AI. And I just lost my mind going into depth of all the different sessions she's got there with some amazing speakers. And so just, really getting a sense of these same kinds of thought processes. And Steve, you've done an amazing job. Great work. And so I just wanted to add that on in respect to, there was a guy, one of the lead engineers on Notion was in, and he was talking about the same kind of approach. Mm-hmm. And what they did was use Notion AI to tie in with their backlogs, et cetera. And he talked about meeting effectiveness, especially with daily scrums, because we all know that can be a good use of time, or it could very easily go off the rails. And so I just wanted to throw that out there to you, Steve, that if, you could even consider taking it that one step further, tying it into those daily live updates, and really pushing for, those intermittent touch points as well, that really just drive better conversation, to talk about the problems, to talk about the challenges, rather than sitting there talking about the update, right? So that was one thing I wanted to share. And then I had heard someone else talk about the requirements aspect, and I just wanted to give a shout out on the chat PRD side, because I was playing in there, and you really can take like a really ambiguous idea, or let's say a change that someone has thrown out to you, and think through how this change, like this is the power where I really saw it. There's huge power in already just documenting our requirements faster, but when we think about the change aspect and how a potential change to the system that's being thrown in the middle of a sprint or at any time could impact things, that's where I see this amazing power to throw things in there and have it do exactly what you said, Steve, where it's brainstorming and thinking with you rather than you just telling it what to do. And so I just wanted to encourage that and tell you guys, if you haven't played with that tool, take a look at it, because, there's just, my goodness, like I said, my mind is blown about how well these things really can interpret at this point. Well, I should use the word interpret carefully, but I think it's more about starting the conversation. We'll say it that way, and the structure, because Chat PRD will even format everything you want exactly how you want. It gives you default templates to play with, but then you can customize it all based on how you're working. And so I could see that just being tremendously valuable. So I'll just leave it there. Just adding on to your awesome, Steve. Great job.
That's a great idea, and that's something I hadn't thought about. Is how do I take that same idea and use that for the daily Scrum? So, what are the things within the daily Scrum that I'm concerned about that we want to hear as a group, and how can we use AI to create something that helps focus that attention on the things that are important, and the things that aren't important, we can move on. We don't have to spend any cycles on that. That's awesome.
I think
Exactly. And oh, sorry. I just want to say that one of the coolest things was this guy as the lead engineer. And I'm a product manager, for the record, right? So I'm just like you. I'm on the delivery side. I don't have this engineering mindset. And so to hear it from an engineer's perspective, to hear him say, to show up to a stand up and be able to show up with this thing in place, I don't have to prepare it. The preparation time, and you're working up to the minute with live updates, like those little minutes all add up. And I just thought that was very cool. So good job.
Yeah, just a couple other things to show you where I'm using some of the AI stuff. So I'm sure you guys are all aware how often you guys do reports that nobody ever reads. So what I do is I send out a notification when I'm done with the report, and I try to add in a little bit of clickbait, but something that could be important to leaders. I mean, if there's nothing important there, then I'm going to keep it pretty vague. But if there's something I know is going to be important to them, I try to put it in such a way that it makes them start to go, oh, wait a minute, I need to read about that. And so I'll use a Rovo to say, hey, based off of the information I have on this page, or there's some things that, and I forget how I worded, and it usually gives me a couple ideas, and I'm like, oh yeah, let me take that one. Oh, that one's good, but let me tweak it a little bit, and then I can put that out, and it's worked because I had one that I put in for my other team, and the next morning I had a message from the manager going, hey, let's talk about this. I'm like, yes, somebody read my report.
To drive usage and buy-in, we've heard the statement, could at the end of a meeting, could this meeting have been an email? And I'm wondering, a corollary to that is, could this meeting have been a dashboard?
Yeah.
I think that might be a powerful way in real time to start getting down that path. The other thing about getting buy-in, in looking at that amazing set of reports you did, I'm thinking back to that stuff we called Agile, where you take little bits and deliver it and then do little more and little more. I'm wondering if you get buy-in also by finding what are the biggest problems that people would want answered by a dashboard, and just doing a few of those quickly, and then saying, get people into that habit of looking at it and then adding things to that.
Yeah, the hard part it all depends on the day. It's getting the response to go, hey, what adds value to you? And they're like, I don't know. So you're
Yeah.
like, oh,
Well,
well,
I
let me
mean, to some degree, the value has to be saving time in other for other things. So when those other things are happening, that may be the time, for instance, during stand-ups, I would always like to put a pin in something that somebody said that tied to a retro item.
Mhm.
Remember last week we talked about this. This is exactly why we're getting better because you did this. It's the same thing if you were at a meeting where people didn't realize that they didn't have to have that 15, even that 15 minutes during the meeting. We didn't have to do those 15 minutes. How, the clickbait, the question bait is, how would you like to have 15 minutes of your life back?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, you take a look at this dashboard offline. And to Mandy's point, there's a lot of talk about Scrum Masters being supplanted by AI. And I think vanilla cookie cutter Scrum Masters kind of deserve to be taken over by something that schedules meetings and updates boards. But for those of you who are good Scrum Masters, you're good because there are things you notice, there are questions you ask during things like the stand up. And and another impactful question to you would be, what are some of the more insightful things that I've come up with that I've added to in stand-ups, in my coaching, in my scrum mastering, that I could have prompted to me by something that I can automate. On the board, every morning, here are stories that are more than 3 days old, in progress. Something as simple as that.
Yeah, because and Scott and I were talking about this a little bit. My mindset is always, how do I work myself out of a job? So if I'm a Scrum Master
Yeah,
and
be careful how successful you are at that, Steve.
well, so far for the last 30 years, it's worked out really well.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
because uh, what has always happened is I always learn something new, and what happens is somebody eventually comes along and goes, "Hey, have you ever thought about this position? Hey, there's an
Yeah.
open. Hey, would you mind applying for that?" And so I never go looking for promotions. They usually end up falling towards me because I'm going in with that mindset. And so I always tell like the teams that I've scrummed for is my goal isn't to be the person you depend on every day. My goal is to help you to become independent to where I'm not needed at all. So help me to understand what I can do to help you guys get to that point to where your life is easier and I'm no longer needed.
Yeah.
And the buy-in doesn't come from this saves me this time, right? That's normally the way we phrase it. This saved me this much time. The impactful buy-in wedge is, this allowed me to do these other things. This gave me the time to do, these extra things. This let the team spend, each person has an hour a week or 4 hours a week more of time with fingers on the keyboard. And that's the demonstrable outcome. You know, it's like when I keep hearing about how happy teams produce better. I don't think many leaders care about that. I think they want to see what the production is. I don't care if they're happy. Every 2 weeks they get a direct happiness deposit.
Couple
Well,
of things actually that I wanted to point out, Steve, that you'd mentioned to me that I think this ties into, you'd shared with me about, you had a couple of core values that drove how you show up the way you do and why you work the way you do. If you could share what those two are, because I also think we can maybe make that more transferable to other people and these other departments that we're serving or helping that maybe they haven't kind of reflected on why they show up at work.
yeah. What it stemmed from is when I interviewed for my position where I'm at now, they asked, "Where do you see yourself in 5 years?" Now I know what most people want to hear, and so I just told them, I said, "Look, I'm going to tell you the answer I always tell people, and about 50% of the people like it." And I go, I really don't care about what my title is. I want to be better than I was the day before, and I want to know that I helped somebody else be successful. I said, so in 5 years, if I'm better than I was day one, day two, day three, and other people are better off because of the value that I'm adding and helping them to be successful, that's all I care about.
I think that's
In,
great.
in 5 years, I want to hope that I have adapted to the things that happened after 2 years that I didn't see coming.
That's so true.
Uh,
The other thing is a really practical tip that you gave, Steve, about how when you're working with those folks who are maybe new to it, that we talked about on why you say pin it, and then building the habit that people are trying to cut in and use AI more. But part of you like, well, let's put this right in front of you. You could walk us through what you do there.
Yeah, so I recently, our organization has started doing what they call a learning day 3 times a year. So everybody, it's like, hey, you get a day off, and if that's reading a book, if that's doing a class, so probably about 70% of the time, I'll usually teach something. And so I taught an introductory Rovo class this last time around. And so the analogy that I gave them is, what's a tool that you use every day? Not like a wrench, but like a, pen or paper or something that, helps you do your stuff. And I go, and mine is my water bottle. I go, so if I'm thirsty and I wait until I'm thirsty to go get this out of the cupboard, I'm going to be dehydrated by the end of the day. So what I typically do is I go and I take it and I sit it on the counter. And as the night before I fill it up, sit on the counter, and as I walk through to my office, I pick it up, and now I have my tool ready to go. So what I had everybody do is I said, okay, if you don't have your tools ready to go for you, you're not going to use them. And I said, what I keep hearing people say is, well, I need to learn how to use that tool. I said, so here's what we're going to do. And so I shared my screen and I said, okay, everybody open up Jira, go up to Rovo. Okay, now that you have that open, I want you to click on full screen. You notice how it created a new tab for you? I want you to pin it. So now it's there ready to go. So anytime you think, oh, well, I wonder if, well, how does this, or anytime you have those questions, you now have your tool ready to go, and all you do is ask it the question. Instead of trying to figure it out and try to go, how do I learn this? Have your tool ready to go and just use it.
Yeah. And for me, what sticks out from that, Steve, is I think what we're seeing, I don't know if others want to weigh in what you're seeing, differently or the same as this, is that the technology is basically all the way there. Super advanced, handles almost everything we need in the workplace. We are not seeing adoption by most of the humans inside these buildings and these walls. And what it looks like is that's the classic problem of them adopting that change. So how do we cut in of folks who are already too busy? And we're asking all these people who aren't normally learners in these other departments. IT, yes, they'll try things out. They love to learn. So not as much in these other departments. I think Steve gives a good example of that structural piece that helps start wedging in the habits. If you remember, like Alan Daly's his talk a year or two ago about how do you wedge in change. That's a great example. Like we have to keep prompting, like stop working the old way. It's not just going to magically come to you. The learning's in the doing. Try this first, and I think that little tip, Steve, was really good. I'm going to definitely steal that one on how do we help them keep shifting at least a little bit here and there. Try AI first or ask AI first. Or you even said you kind of see it as almost like it's there next to you, right? I think you described it that way with them.
Yeah. When I was teaching the class, I was reading how Atlassian looks at their AI in Rovo, and it's like a roving or roaming agent. And so that changed my mindset completely to go, oh, it's not a tool, it's not Excel, it's not Word. It's my personal assistant that can be there to help me whenever I need help with something, to think something through, to ideate on some things, or how would I put something together. And so I have the things I use every single day are pinned at the top of my screen, and I'm in Rovo all day long. And I talk about it a lot with the groups. And we were talking about every time we do a release, we have to put certain information into a ServiceNow ticket. And so I had created a Rovo agent that basically all you do is you copy the link for the release, and you have all your stories and everything in there, and it generates a small little report for you that you can copy and paste in. So I was talking to one of the developers, and he's like, "Oh, I don't think I remembered that was there." He goes, "But I use Rovo and I type in this." I'm like, "You're using Rovo? Awesome." Because it's not something that the developers especially will typically do. They're just kind of going about their day and like, I got more admin stuff to do. But because I've been talking about it so much, he's like, oh yeah, let me just see if I can't use Rovo. So that's speeding his work up. But now he has this other tool that I told him he can use and just copy and paste it in. I go, and by all means, if there's something that's not right in there or you get asked questions on, one, tell me what that is so that I can update the Rovo agent, or hey, I will add you as an admin on that Rovo agent and you can add stuff in there as well as you see it. So it's getting them to start fishing for themselves and realize that it's not another development tool, or it's their personal assistant.
Another buy-in wedge for leadership, your sponsors that are not going to open Rovo and do their stuff, but asking them the kinds of questions like, what do you do during the day that's harder than you think it should be? Right? So instead of you've come up with a ton of good things that you've been able to automate and make better, but they may have some things that are burrs in their saddle that you won't even think about. And the meta benefit is the amazement on their face when they ask for something and 2 days later their job is easier.
Mm-hmm.
Is huge. But you're training them to start thinking about not how to use Rovo, but how do I ask, you're training them how to prompt you. Tell me the things that are bugging you. And even if you say, what not tell me something that's harder than you think, but at the end of the day, hey, what happened today that was harder than it should have been? Give me a hint. And you'll get leaders have no problem telling you what's harder than it should be.
Yeah. See, here's something else to think about that's more kind of a side piece that I'm starting to tell people. When you build something using AI, take some time to figure out how long it was taking you before, or how long it would take you to do that. Because like right now, Rovo's free, but that's not going to be true forever. And so when the business is starting to look at, hey, where can we save some money? Well, you know what, this Rovo thing, I don't know how many people really use that. Is there really a benefit? Let's cut that. So the more that people are using it and they can say, hey, here's how much time it's saving me. We have a whole team at Arvest that does process improvement. In fact, they teach a bunch of classes. I'm yellow belt certified. They take you all the way up to black belt certification. And so you can hand off that information to them and they will give you here's what your cost savings is, so that you can start promoting that and sharing that. And as that rolls up to leadership, they start to see the value that's being obtained by having some of these tools in place. And it not only justifies the cost of it, but, cause them to start to go, oh, how can we utilize that better?
Mm-hmm. Great point. Yeah. They are starting to charge the pricing windows for those who haven't seen that on some of the AI tools is already shifting. So no, the glory free days are coming to an end. And that's a great point, Steve. It'd be terrible. I already think companies using all this and leveraging the way you're describing all those time savings, getting engagement, alignment, clarity, what they're doing. You're already seeing those gaps start. But if those other companies don't ever get going and then they say, well, it's expensive and clearly not viable, no one's using it. Well, now I think it just becomes like a death, spiral going down now. Have all that power at their fingertips. So I'm really glad you mentioned that. I hadn't thought of that.
But add at the end, Henrik Nyberg's thing about full utilization myth is really good. The one with the stickies and the smiley faces, because the way he ends it is when he shows that not context switching, you get your stuff here instead of here. He doesn't say it saves you this much time. He said, now we could be delivering more value in here. And that's the message, because it saves you time. I don't care. If you had to work till 7 instead of 5, good on you. But if you can show, then we can deliver more stuff for you. It's a subtle twist, but I think it puts it into that outcome frame.
I like that.
The other thing too with the AI is I try to think of it the same way I would like an MVP. And let me just start somewhere. I just need something small.
Mm-hmm.
Then I can figure out, is there a way that I can improve upon that? Is there a way I can automate that? Most of the time, what I'm finding is I don't need 100%. I just need 80%. And if I can at least get to that 80%, I can iterate on that as I have time. Because like with the case where we're going to extract these subtasks for this person, is we're going to start off with, hey, you have a Rovo agent, you point it to your file, and it'll go. Let that run for a couple of cycles. Let's get some feedback, improve on that, and then let's figure out how we can automate that for you.
And I know we're getting near time. So one, Steve, thanks so much for just being willing to step up and do it. Yeah, really, really great stuff. Good interaction, good turnout. This is the kind of stuff I think we're hoping for when we said we'll shift the topic. So thanks for that. And thanks for everyone for chipping in. Brian has done a number of things. He's mentioned a little bit before, and I'm putting him on the spot a little bit, but he had volunteered to actually share some of that as well. Brian, do you mind giving us a little teaser what they might expect?
Certainly. First and foremost, because of the energy coming from this group, I've decided to do a couple of things, on a personal level and really see how far I could achieve those passion projects. And Steve, what you are saying, the story that you're telling resonates on such a universal level in terms of getting messy, unstructured data and being able to tell a story. And so, I've got a Scrum Master background. I've been in delivery management. I've been in management roles, and understand just the amount of energy that's taken for that.
Mm-hmm.
And so what started off as vibe coding, I actually built out an application that's live now because of this meeting and the conversations that we had. And so I, not hyperbole, I quit my job, I formed a company, and I have got something live that tells a similar story that Steve is trying to set, to
Holy
offer his
mackerel.
teams. And so, right, brain bomb there, Scott.
Well,
So,
that's a damn good teaser.
Yeah. He
so
I quit
wins.
my job and started a company. Find out how.
He wins.
well, the web link is live if y'all want to explore before it.
But yes, put it in chat or send it out, or I'll send it out, Brian. No, yeah, that's a hell of a teaser. Okay, that teaser of the year.
Well, just
Okay.
a bit that you've
Yeah, I'm going to be on travel for next month's meeting. I'm going to cancel my trip.
Yeah, just some of the couple things I've heard you talk about. I've used that as examples, like just with my son, because he's looking at some career changes and stuff to go, hey, look, you're in a unique area and space where you have something that you could offer to the masses. I'm a little bit more boxed in. Hey, here's this guy that I was, he was talking about this. Hey, you should try doing something like that. Take a look at that.
I just think that, I mean, I'm looking across the room here. We're all seasoned professionals. If we had chance to go back to our early innovative mindset, college or high school, what would we do different? I
Mm-hmm.
think the conversations that we're having in this forum is that type of mindset. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, we all have health insurance. We need stability and all that. But
Yeah,
I just find it an intoxicating time in history.
Oh,
And
yes.
I have a colleague that's working on, we don't know what it's going to turn out to be, but it's basically uh, AI, yes, and agile, not
Mm.
supplanted by it. And I think things like what we're finding here are the people with an agile mindset are going to be able to leverage all this amazing stuff that AI is giving us
Mhm.
tons better. Because, I mean, whenever I talk to leadership, I'd say we're not going to do more work, we're going to do more of the right work, right? Well, the corollary to
100%.
that is with AI, we can do tons more of the wrong work quickly.
I,
Good one.
I stand by my mindset of AI is going to enhance, not replace.
Mhm.
And so,
Well, that's why I'm glad we didn't use calculators so we didn't forget how to multiply.
That's so true. Well, awesome, Brian. Thanks for sharing that, and I'll be sending out something on that, and depending on the feedback. I know we got the lean topic first, but now I'm super eager to hear. So we'll see if that shifts from waiting a whole month. And on that note, I did just listen to a podcast yesterday saying this is the guy who's a head of growth at Google for a long time. He goes, "Oh, this is the best time ever to be alive," because what you can do if you have ideas, like it's everything. You don't have to do all the normal work. So yeah, perfect timing on that one, Brian. Good and exciting. We'll let people know. If anyone else has questions on anything, just email me about the, because even what you just mentioned, Ben, that sounds interesting. Those topics, I know we've been talking some about what does it look like with Agile and AI. If there's other topics or questions, things that could help, let us know. It's some of that feedback to help shift what we shifted, and I love what we're getting now. So very, very engaging. But I'll honor the time box for now. Again, thanks, Steve. Thanks everyone for coming and participating, putting the chat in there. We will hopefully see you guys all in 2 more weeks. Thanks, everybody.